Today we are drawing a line in the sand, ladies. That line is our boundary, and you are going to learn how to not let people cross it. And let's be honest, how many times have you said yes to something and immediately regretted it? Whether it's an extra work project, volunteering for yet another school event, or even a last minute client call that eats into family time. It all adds up. And before you know it, your schedule and your bandwidth is maxed out and you're running on fumes and you're burnt out and you're starting to become resentful. But here's the thing, you're not out of time, you are just out of bandwidth. And the difference is huge. So today we're talking about how to set time boundaries that actually stick so you can protect your energy, focus on what really matters for you, and stop feeling pulled in a million different directions. And if that is something that you struggle with, I've got you, because inside my free bandwidth reset workshop, I'm going to walk you through my simple bandwidth formula so that you can finally see exactly how much time you actually have before you commit to anything new. Now, if you know that you want to go ahead and be in that workshop, you can sign up at thelauraddavis.com/bandwidth. All right, let's get into today's episode. My name is Laura Davis. I am your time management BFF, and I'm here to help you ditch the hot mess and level up your work-life balance using a proven time management framework. Today, we're diving into why setting time boundaries is absolutely essential for working moms. You know that burnout is very, very real, and we often try to do it all. We are juggling endless calls, endless meetings, school events, big projects, big goals for our corporate job and for our businesses. And we even have those just one more thing requests. And before we know it, we are utterly exhausted and frustrated. And so one thing that is important to keep in mind is that doing more does not necessarily equal better productivity. And in fact, overcommitting can actually dilute your focus and makes it nearly impossible to get anything done effectively. Let me tell you, boundaries aren't selfish. They are 100% necessary. They protect your energy, they protect your time, and they protect your mental well-being. I remember a time when I used to actually say yes to everything, working at all hours, volunteering at every single school event, taking on extra stretch projects at work, saying yes to too many collaborations in my business that are too close together. And then one day I hit a wall of just absolute pure exhaustion. And that's when it became very clear to me that my boundary lines needed to be drawn much thicker. Okay. One of the things that we're going to cover in that bandwidth reset workshop that I mentioned that's happening on March 17th is we are going to map out exactly where your time is going so that you can see how much is already on your plate before ever committing to something new. So again, go ahead and grab your spot at that workshop, thelauraddavis.com/bandwidth. And now I want to take you into a formula that I created for really setting those time boundaries that stick, okay? So we're going to go through a couple of different steps, but I want to talk about that formula and help you set those boundaries in a way that you're going to be able to stick to them realistically. Okay, so step one is to know your bandwidth. So most of us set boundaries only when we're already overwhelmed, right? Like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get to your breaking point and you're like, I have to start saying no. But why wait until you're already at your breaking point? Imagine if you could set those boundaries proactively by truly understanding your capacity and your bandwidth. So in the workshop that I mentioned, I'm going to show you a very simple formula, and it is an actual tool that calculates how much time you individually have in different areas of your life every single month. So for example, you might assume that you have 20 hours a week that you can work on your side business, okay? But once you account for your full-time job, your family, your commitments, your other miscellaneous things that are happening, you may actually only have 10 hours a week. And that kind of insight will completely change how you decide to run your business and what you decide to commit to. Step number 2 is to choose your no before you need it, okay? So if you wait until you are already drained to say no, you're either going to cave in or you're going to feel a crushing amount of guilt after you say no. That's why it's important to decide in advance what is a non-negotiable boundary for you with your time. So personally, I've set a rule that I do not take any corporate job meetings before 10 a.m. This allows me to have focused time first thing in the morning because that's when my brain power is the absolute highest. I have reserved that time before 10 a.m. in my corporate job to do focused work. So if someone requests a meeting before 10 a.m., I do a couple of things. One, I determine if it is a high priority initiative. And then I also determine if it is a high priority person asking. So for example, of course, I'm going to say yes to executives most of the time and kind of give a little bit on that boundary. But 95% of the time, my boundary is no corporate meetings before 10 a.m. Now, if it is not either of those things, it's not high priority and it's not a high priority person, then I will suggest another date and time that works better for my alignment and my commitment to the focused work that I need to do in my corporate job. It's all about being very clear and very intentional with what works best for you. So step 3 is one of my favorite. This is embracing the 24-hour rule. So we all know that rushing into commitments can really lead to overwhelm and that sense of feeling like you're failing everywhere, right? You feel like you can't give enough of yourself to any part of your life. So you feel like you're overwhelmed and like you're failing everywhere. And I have been there as well. I have jumped at every single opportunity and said yes to everything until my calendar was completely maxed out. But now I follow a very simple rule. I don't commit to any big ask without giving myself 24 to 48 hours to truly think it through. So this means before saying yes to anything significant, I take a full day to consult my schedule and I look at my bandwidth tool, the one that I created. I actually use that. I will consult that tool. I also evaluate whether or not I genuinely want to work on the project, the task, whatever it is that was asked of me. I want to make sure that I genuinely want to work on that. And then I also check in with my support network to make sure that it's doable. That if this is going to take up more of my time, does my support network have the ability to support me on the back end of that? So whether that be with Harper or with the house or my attention with Zach, I want to make sure that it's doable with my support network. This 24 to 48 hour pause not only helps me avoid overloading my day, but also allows me to set realistic boundaries that protect my time and energy. So in the bandwidth reset workshop, I'm going to show you how to integrate this 24-hour rule into your planning process so you can confidently manage your commitments without the stress of the last minute burnout and the last minute requests where you find yourself overwhelmed and overcommitted. Let's shift gears for just a minute and talk about communicating your boundaries, because that is inevitably the next question that I always get is, I want to set the boundaries and that sounds great, but then how do I communicate those boundaries? Setting boundaries is one thing, but like I said, enforcing them without the guilt that we sometimes feel is another challenge altogether. And many of us really, we just want to be a team player, right? Like we just want to be that go-to woman. We want to be superwoman. We don't want anyone to think that we can't handle something. And so we worry about disappointing others and being seen as difficult or incompetent or not able to be a team player. But here's the reality. When you say no, you're not shutting people out. You're just saying yes to truly what matters in your life. So here are some practical tips for you when it comes to communicating your time boundaries. First, use clear statements. So for example, instead of just saying, oh, I can't do that, say evening calls do not work for my schedule. Or this additional project requires X number of hours per week, which would take me over capacity. that is clear and assertive, but also kind. Okay. You can also offer alternatives. So, for example, you could say, my workload is not able to accommodate another project of this time commitment, but I'm happy to help you brainstorm another team member who would be an absolute rock star for this opportunity. This way, you're showing solutions. You're not just saying no, but you're also helping to come up with the solution. And then finally, you can embrace silence. And I will say that you don't always have to justify your boundaries. They are your boundaries for a reason, and you sometimes don't owe people an explanation. And a simple no is enough. So, for example, you can say, no, that does not work for me. Now, I will say with this one caveat. This is a very direct form of communication. And I only recommend using this method with people who repeatedly disrespect your time boundaries. If this is someone who in general respects you and you have a really good relationship with them, this could come off as rude, where you are just saying, no, that doesn't work for me. It's all about your attention behind it. But if there is someone in your life who is constantly disrespecting your time and your time boundaries, it is okay to say no as a complete sentence without any other form of explanation. So if you struggle with saying no or finding yourself second guessing your boundaries, I don't want you to worry, because we cover this in depth inside that bandwidth reset workshop that I've mentioned. And I actually share with you communication strategies and real scripts. I actually give you scripts on how to have these conversations with different people in your life based on very real scenarios. And so, speaking of very real scenarios, I want to share a real life example of someone who went to the bandwidth reset workshop and can now illustrate the power of setting boundaries. So one client inside of Time Management Academy used to say yes to every extra project at work that her boss asked her to do. And she would often stay late at work. She would go in early, which both of these things led her staying late and going in early led her to skipping her workouts. Now, she loved working out, and she had health goals that she wanted to achieve after having 3 kids in 4 years. But she felt burnt out and stressed, and she started to resent a job that she once loved because she felt like she didn't have time for anything else except for work and coming home and taking care of her family. Now, after going through the bandwidth formula exercise during the last workshop, she realized she only had an extra 3 hours per week for activities outside of work and being a mom. Now, that eye-opening insight gave her the courage to start saying no to additional big projects at work without feeling guilty about it. And about 2 weeks after the last workshop, she started going to the gym again 3 times a week. She said that it not only improved her physical health, but her mental health too. And she even said that she feels like she shows up as a better mom and wife because she is not constantly stressed, overwhelmed, and stretched to the max. So if you are feeling tired of being stretched too thin and you want a simple, customizable system for setting those boundaries that actually stick, I want you to join us in the next Bandwidth Reset workshop on March 17th. Inside the workshop, I'm going to walk you through this proven formula that I created to show you how to use a personalized, color-coded tool that gives you a clear view of whether you are under, at, or over capacity every single month. Plus, I'm also going to give you those real-life scripts for saying no without feeling guilty. And we're going to help you create a roadmap for a balanced and successful remaining 2025. So imagine starting every single 90 days with clarity, peace of mind, and the confidence to focus on what truly matters most to you. And that's exactly what we're going to achieve together in the Bandwidth Reset workshop on March 17th. You can grab your spot at theloradavis.com/bandwidth. Because again, you deserve to protect your time, and setting boundaries is not about you doing less or not being able to handle the things that you are doing. It's about doing what matters most to you. And it's about prioritizing those needle moving projects and activities and initiatives. So I can't wait to see you in that workshop. And I will also see you in the next episode.